Kang Minho did not attend charity galas to be charitable. He attended them because Hanshin Group's board expected the chairman's face on the step and repeat, smiling like a man who had never broken anyone in his life. He was 3 minutes from leaving when he saw the necklace. It hung from the neck of a small girl standing near the dessert table, her hair braided into 2 neat puffs, her dress a size too formal for a child who kept sneaking sugar cubes into her pocket. Jade, carved into the shape of a magnolia bud, wrapped in antique gold filigree. There was only one necklace like it in the world. His grandmother had commissioned it for his mother the year Minho was born. His mother had worn it until the day she died. And 7 years ago, Minho had placed it around the neck of a woman he thought he would marry. A woman who disappeared 3 weeks later with 200 million, one of his money, and no explanation at all. He was still staring when a second girl, identical down to the gap in her front teeth, ran up beside the first and whispered something that made them both giggle and glance toward the drinks table, where a woman was laughing at something a waiter had said. Minho's chest went cold in a way it hadn't gone cold in years, not even the night he identified his father's body. "Excuse me," he said to no one, and crossed the ballroom floor like a man walking toward a verdict. She felt him before she saw him. He watched her spine straighten, watched the laugh die at the corner of her mouth, watched her turn with the particular slowness of someone who already knows who is standing behind them and is buying herself one more second of not having to look. "Amara," he said. Amara Adeyemi looked exactly like a woman who had spent 7 years building a life specifically so she'd never have to hear that name again. "Minho, you're in Seoul. I have a bakery 3 blocks from here. I didn't know you'd be at this event, or I would have..." She stopped herself, recalculated. "It doesn't matter. It's good to see you're well. Whose children are those?" The question landed exactly where he'd aimed it. Her hand found the stem of her wine glass and did not lift it. "Mine. That necklace belonged to my mother. I know whose necklace it is, Minho. I was there when you put it on me." "Then explain to me," he said, low enough that the string quartet swallowed it before anyone nearby could hear, "why my mother's necklace is currently choking a 6-year-old at a charity gala, on the same night I happen to be looking at 2 children who have my sister's chin and my father's eyebrows." Amara's jaw tightened. For one moment, one single unguarded moment, something like fear crossed her face, and it wasn't fear of him. It was fear of the room, of who might be listening. She glanced toward the entrance, toward the security detail stationed by the ice sculpture, and something in her posture folded inward, the way a person folds when they've spent years flinching at doors. "Not here," she said. "Then where? Because I flew back into this country believing you took my money and vanished because you never wanted to marry into this family in the first place. I have hated you efficiently for 7 years, Amara. Do not tell me not here, like I'm the unreasonable one." "Appa!" The word cracked across the ballroom like a dropped glass. One of the twins, the one with the gap in her teeth, had run halfway across the floor toward a tall man in a navy suit near the bar, arms already lifting to be picked up, calling him Appa with the total joyful certainty only a small child has. The man was not Minho. He was Do-Hyun Woo, Minho's head of security, Minho's oldest friend, a man who had stood at his right hand since they were 14 years old and had never once, in 19 years, mentioned that he had a family in Seoul he'd never introduced. Hyunwoo froze with the girl half lifted in his arms, and over her small shoulder his eyes met Minho's across the ballroom. And for the first time in 19 years, Kang Minho watched his best friend look genuinely, completely afraid. "Hyunwoo," Minho said, and the room, without knowing why, went quiet. "Whose daughter is she calling you?" Hyunwoo set the girl down with the careful gentleness of a man handling something he loves and is about to lose. "Nari," he said to her, "go find your sister. I'll come find you both in a minute, okay?" The girl, Nari, looked between the two men with the sharp instinct children have for adult danger, then trotted off obediently, glancing back once. "She's not mine," Hyunwoo said quietly once she was gone. She's called me that since she could talk. I never corrected her because Amara asked me not to. I'm sorry, Minho. I should have told you the moment I found them." "Found them where?" "Lagos. 4 years ago. You sent me to negotiate the port contract with the Adeyemi shipping family, and Amara answered the door of her sister's house with a baby on each hip." Minho felt something in his chest crack clean down the middle. 4 years. You have known where she was for 4 years, and you let me believe she robbed me and ran. I let you believe what she asked me to let you believe, because she was terrified, and because the reason she was terrified had your family's name on it. Hyunwoo's voice dropped lower. "This isn't the place, Minho. There are people in this room who report to your uncle." That single sentence did more to steady Minho than any amount of anger could have. Your uncle, Kang Jae-wook, who had run Hanshin as regent for the 2 years between Minho's father's death and Minho turning 30, and who had never fully let go of the reins even after Minho took the chairmanship back. He found Amara again near the coat check, already shepherding both twins into their jackets, already halfway to the door. "You weren't leaving without telling me anything," Minho said. It wasn't a question. "I was leaving before Jae-wook's people saw those girls' faces clearly enough to remember them," Amara said, "which is exactly what's about to happen if you keep standing here shouting my name across a ballroom." "I didn't shout. You said Hyunwoo's name like a verdict. People noticed." He looked at her. Really looked, past the fury, past 7 years of a story he'd told himself so many times it had calcified into fact. She looked thinner than he remembered, tired in the specific way of someone who has been afraid for a very long time and has simply learned to function inside the fear rather than escape it. 7 years, Amara, he said, and his voice, despite every effort, cracked on the number. "You let me believe you were a thief. You let my grandmother cry over that necklace like it had been stolen from her. You let me become the kind of man who doesn't trust anyone, and you did it on purpose." "I did it to keep my daughters alive," Amara said, and for the first time her composure slipped entirely, her eyes bright and furious and wet all at once. "You want to be angry at me? Fine, be angry. But you do it after you hear what your family did, not before." The twins, Hana and Nari, she'd said their names without meaning to, stood on either side of her, small hands gripping her coat, watching the tall stranger with matching expressions of wary curiosity. The one called Hana reached up without warning and touched the jade magnolia at her throat, an unconscious habit the way children touch things that are theirs. "That necklace," Minho said, quieter now, "was supposed to go to my wife." "It did," Amara said. "For 3 weeks, I was going to be her. Then your uncle sat across from me in a hotel room I didn't choose and told me exactly what would happen to my mother's shipping license, my sister's visa, and my father's health if I didn't disappear before the engagement was announced publicly. He had documents, Minho, bank records, a doctor's file on my father's heart condition that no one outside our family should have had access to. He wasn't guessing. He was showing me exactly how thoroughly your family could destroy mine, and how quietly." Minho's mouth had gone dry. "My uncle doesn't have that kind of reach." "Your uncle," Amara said, "has had that kind of reach since before you were old enough to know what Hanshin actually was underneath the shipping contracts. I didn't run from you. I ran for these two." She glanced down at the girls, and her voice broke properly now. "I didn't even know I was carrying them yet. I found out on the plane." The ballroom noise swelled somewhere behind them. Laughter, a toast, the ordinary sound of people who had no idea a man's entire understanding of his life had just been rewritten in a coat check corridor. "I need to see documents," Minho said. Amara, I need to know if they're mine before I let myself believe a single word of this." Amara reached into her coat pocket, and for one disorienting second, Minho thought she might actually be carrying proof. 7 years prepared for this exact conversation. Instead, she pulled out her phone, thumbed it open, and turned the screen toward him without another word. It was a photograph. Old, slightly grainy, clearly taken in secret, of Kang Jae-wook seated across a hotel table from a much younger, much more frightened Amara, a manila folder open between them, his hand resting on top of it like a man closing a deal. "Who took this?" Minho asked. Amara's eyes flicked, just once, toward the ballroom entrance, toward a woman in a burgundy dress who had just walked in, scanning the crowd with the particular alertness of someone looking for a specific face. "She did," Amara said. "My sister. And she's been keeping it safe for 7 years, in case I ever needed to prove I wasn't lying. Minho, she's here tonight for a reason. Grace doesn't fly to Seoul for parties." Across the ballroom, the woman in burgundy found what she was looking for. Her eyes locked onto Amara's, and her expression was not one of a happy reunion. It was a warning. Grace Okafor Adeyemi did not hug her sister when she reached them. She gripped Amara's elbow and steered her, the twins, and, after a single assessing glance, Minho and Hyun-woo toward a service corridor behind the coat check, moving like a woman who had rehearsed evacuation routes. "You weren't supposed to be recognizable tonight," Grace said to Amara, low and urgent. "That's why I told you the navy dress, not the necklace. I didn't put it on her. Hana did it herself this morning, and I didn't have the heart to take it off." Amara looked stricken. "Grace, what's happened?" Jae-wook's assistant called our lawyer in Lagos this afternoon asking for updated documentation on Papa's shipping license. Grace's eyes cut to Minho, sharp and unapologetic. 7 years, and the day your face turns up at a Hanshin event is the same day his office starts digging through our family's paperwork again. That's not a coincidence, Chairman Kang. That's a message. "I didn't send anyone to touch your father's license," Minho said. "I know you didn't. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to what you represent." Grace turned back to her sister. "We need to leave the city. Tonight. If we can." "No." The word came out of Minho before he decided to say it, and it carried enough authority that even Grace paused. "If my uncle is already moving, running doesn't protect you. It just means he wins by default, the way he won 7 years ago. I want to see everything, the photograph, the documents he showed you, all of it. Tonight." "Why would I trust you with anything that could destroy my family?" Amara asked. "Because I am the only person in Seoul with more leverage over Kang Jae-wook than he has over you," Minho said. "I'm the chairman. He answers to me on paper, even if he spent 2 years pretending otherwise. But I can't use that leverage against something I haven't seen." Hyun-woo stepped in, quiet but firm. "Amara, I've protected this secret for 4 years because you asked me to, and because I understood why. But Minho finding out tonight, in a ballroom, half-informed, that's more dangerous for you than him finding out in full, in private, with time to plan. Let him see it properly." Amara looked down at her daughters. Nari had fallen asleep standing up against her mother's leg, exhausted past the point of caring about adult conversations. Hana was still awake, still watching Minho with the frank, unblinking attention of a child deciding whether a stranger could be trusted. "She has your eyebrows," Amara said finally, quietly, to no one and everyone. "I used to think it every single day and hate myself for missing you because of it." Something in Minho's chest, some old locked room, opened without his permission. "Bring the documents to my building," he said. "Tonight. I'll have DNA testing arranged discreetly by morning, and I'll have my own security review anything Grace has on my uncle, independent of Hyun-woo, so there's no question of loyalty clouding the read." "And if the documents prove what I've told you," Amara said, "what happens to him? To Jae-wook?" Minho's jaw set in a way Hyun-woo had seen exactly twice before in 19 years of friendship. Once at his father's funeral, once the night he took the chairmanship back from the board that hadn't wanted to give it to him. "Then he learns," Minho said, "what it costs to spend 7 years pretending he owns something that was never his." They convened at midnight in a private office on the 40th floor of the Hanshin Tower, city lights strung out below the windows like something ordinary and unaware. Grace laid out 3 items on the glass table. The photograph, a folder of financial statements bearing Jae-wook's private signature stamp rather than the company's official seal, and a single handwritten letter. Minho read the letter twice before he trusted his voice enough to speak. It was from his uncle to a contact at a rival syndicate, the Daechun Network, longtime Hanshin rivals, dated 3 weeks before Amara's disappearance, discussing an arranged alliance marriage meant to merge territories, and referring to Amara only as the current obstacle, foreign, easily removed. He wasn't protecting the family from scandal, Minho said slowly. He was clearing the board so he could marry me into the Daechun bloodline and merge 2 syndicates under his own influence, with me as the figurehead groom. And a black foreign fiancé with no leverage over him was the easiest obstacle to erase, Grace said. That's the part that should make you angriest, Chairman Kang. Not that he lied to you, that he did the math on exactly how disposable he thought my sister was. Minho set the letter down with the careful precision of a man controlling something close to rage. There's a DNA lab I trust, he said. It opens at 7. I want the girls tested first thing, and I want it done somewhere Jae-wook has no reach at all. And if it comes back positive, Hyunwoo asked, what's the play? Minho looked at Amara. Really looked, the anger from the ballroom finally settling underneath something steadier, something that had been waiting 7 years to be let back into the light. Then I stopped being a man who got robbed, Minho said, and start being a father who has 7 years to make up for. Both things can be true. But the DNA test isn't for me to believe you, Amara. It's for the paper trail I'm about to build to burn my uncle to the ground. At exactly that moment, Grace's phone buzzed once on the glass table. She turned it over, read the screen, and went very still. That's our lawyer in Lagos, she said. He says 2 men showed up at Papa's house an hour ago asking questions about a property transfer. Papa wouldn't let them in. They didn't leave. By 6 in the morning, Minho had a private jet on standby, 2 of Hyunwoo's most trusted men rerouted to Lagos, and Grace on a call with her father, her voice pitched calm for his sake, while her free hand shook against the office window. Amara sat across from Minho, both of them awake all night in different chairs, the twins finally asleep on a leather couch under a borrowed blanket. I keep waiting for this to feel like a trick, Amara admitted, eyes fixed on nothing. 7 years of assuming any kindness from your family was the opening move of something worse. I know, Minho said. I spent 7 years assuming any woman who looked at me the way you used to was after Hanshin's money. You made me suspicious of everyone. I made myself suspicious of everyone. We did that to each other without ever speaking again. I didn't want to make you like this. You didn't. My uncle did. I just let it finish the job. He rubbed a hand over his face. Tell me what he said to you. All of it. Not the summary. The actual conversation. I need to hear the words he used. Amara was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice had gone flat in the particular way of someone reciting something they've relived too many times to feel it fresh anymore. He said your father was already sick and wouldn't survive a scandal involving a foreign fiancé. The board hadn't approved. He said if I loved you, the kindest thing I could do was disappear cleanly, take a settlement and never contact you again, because a public breakup would embarrass the family and a quiet disappearance would let you grieve and move on with your dignity intact. He made it sound like a mercy. It took me 2 years to understand it was a threat, wearing a mercy's clothes. And the money, the 200 million, wasn't a gift and wasn't stolen. It was hush money, transferred without my consent into an account he then had frozen the moment I landed in Lagos, so that if I ever tried to explain myself to you, there'd be a paper trail that made me look exactly like what you already believed, a woman who took your money and ran. Her hands twisted together. I never touched a single one of it, Minho. I have bank statements for 7 years of working double shifts in a bakery to prove it if you want them. Something cold and clarifying moved through Minho's chest. Not disbelief this time, but grief, sharp and delayed. For 7 years, he hadn't needed to lose. I believed him instantly, Minho said quietly. You, I doubted from the first phone call that went unanswered. Him, I never questioned once. What does that say about me? It says you were raised to trust blood over everything, Amara said, including evidence. That's not a flaw unique to you. It's the entire design of families like yours. Before he could answer, the office door opened without a knock. A breach of protocol so unlike Hyunwoo that Minho was on his feet before he registered why. It wasn't Hyunwoo. It was Kang Jae-wook, in a suit pressed at 5 in the morning, flanked by 2 men Minho didn't recognize, his expression arranged into the same warm, avuncular concern he'd worn at every family dinner for the last 7 years. Minho, he said, gaze sliding past his nephew to the sleeping girls on the couch, lingering there half a second too long. I heard you had an eventful evening. I came as soon as I could. Did you? Minho said. Of course. Family looks after family. Jae-wook's eyes moved to Amara, and whatever warmth had been in them for Minho's benefit disappeared entirely. Miss Adeyemi, it's been a long time. I see you've kept something of ours. His gaze dropped deliberately to the jade necklace still around the sleeping Hana's neck. I think, Jae-wook continued, smiling like a man perfectly certain of his own safety, it's time we discussed what happens to that necklace and to these 2 lovely surprises now that the truth is finally out. You will not speak about my daughters as if they're assets, Minho said, and the temperature in the room dropped several degrees. And you will explain right now, in front of everyone in this office, exactly what you told Amara Adeyemi 7 years ago in a hotel room she didn't choose to be in. Jae-wook's smile didn't waver, but something behind his eyes recalculated. I protected this family from a scandal your father was too sick to survive. I'd do it again. You arranged a merger with Dae-chun using me as the collateral, Minho said. I've read the letter. I have the photograph. I have Amara's testimony, and I will have her father's, once your men currently sitting outside his house in Lagos are recalled. He let that land. You didn't protect Hanshin, uncle. You tried to sell it out from under a dying man's son. And when the woman I loved became inconvenient to your plans, you erased her the way you'd erase a line item. For the first time, Jae-wook's composure cracked. You have no idea what it took to hold this company together while your father was dying and you were too young and too soft to run it. I was 28, Minho said. Old enough to grieve my father without you turning his death into a business opportunity. Grace, who had been silent by the window, stepped forward with her phone already raised, recording. Say that part again about Dae-chun. For the board, when they see this footage. Jae-wook's man moved half a step toward her, and Hyunwoo was between them before the motion finished, close enough that the message needed no translation. You're outnumbered, uncle, Minho said quietly. You're outmaneuvered, and as of this morning, you're out of leverage. The only thing left to decide is how loud you'd like your exit to be. It was Hana's voice that broke the standoff. Small, sleep-thick, sitting up on the couch with her sister stirring beside her. Mommy, why is everyone shouting? The room went instantly, sharply silent. Amara crossed to her daughters in 3 steps, gathering them close, and when she looked up at Jae-wook over their heads, there was nothing frightened left in her expression at all. Only 7 years of exhaustion finally allowed to become something else. You spent 7 years making sure I was too afraid to say a word, she told him. You don't get to be uncomfortable now that I'm not anymore. If that moment landed for you the way it landed for everyone in that office, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because what Kang Jae-wook does next changes everything for this family. Jae-wook straightened his jacket with as much dignity as a cornered man could manage. This isn't over, Minho. I still sit on this board. I still have relationships you don't understand. Then use them, Minho said. Call every ally you think you have left before 9 o'clock. because that's when I convene an emergency session and put the letter, the photograph, and Grace's footage in front of every one of them. You can spend the next 3 hours finding out how many of them are still willing to answer your calls once they know what you did." Jae-wook left without another word, his men falling in behind him, the office door closing with a click that felt somehow louder than a slam would have. Amara let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for 7 years. Is it really that simple? A letter and a photograph, and he just loses? No, Minho said, watching the door. Now the real fight starts. Men like my uncle don't disappear because they're caught. They disappear because they're outmaneuvered before they can regroup. I have 3 hours to make sure every board member hears this from me before he reaches them first. He looked at the twins, wide awake now, watching the adults with the particular gravity children reserve, for moments they don't fully understand but no matter. And I have 3 hours, he added, quieter, to also figure out how to be introduced to my own daughters properly, because I refuse to let the first thing they remember about their father be a shouting match in an office at 6 a.m. Hana studied him for a long moment, then held up the jade necklace between 2 small fingers. "Grandma Yoon says this is protection," she said matter-of-factly. "Auntie Grace's friend gave it to Mommy and said it means someone loves you enough to keep you safe forever." Minho's throat closed entirely. "She's not wrong," he managed. "It does mean that. Is Grandma Yoon your mommy?" "She was," Minho said. "She'd have loved you both so much it would have been unbearable." Nari, more cautious than her sister, tilted her head. "Are you going to be our appa now, or just the shouting man from the party?" Behind them, Grace made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Amara pressed a hand over her mouth, and Minho, chairman of Hanshin Group, feared architect of Baeko's underworld reach, a man who had negotiated deals that ended careers and occasionally lives, knelt down to a 6-year-old's eye level and answered the only question that had actually mattered all night. "I'd like to be, if you'll let me try," he said. "I promise I'll shout a lot less." The Hanshin boardroom at 9 a.m. held 11 people who had built careers on knowing exactly which way power was about to tilt before it tilted. Minho watched them read the room in real time. Jae-wook seated at the far end, jaw tight, 3 allies clustered near him, who had already, visibly, put a little more distance between their chairs and his than boardroom etiquette required. He didn't waste time on preamble. He played Grace's footage. He read the letter aloud in full, including the phrase, "the current obstacle, foreign, easily removed," and let it sit in the room exactly as long as it needed to sit before anyone found their voice. "My uncle ran this company as regent for 2 years, Minho said, "and used that authority to broker a private alliance with Dae-chun, our direct rival, without board approval, using my personal life as the currency. He did this by threatening a Nigerian family's business license and a dying man's health, and by manufacturing a paper trail designed to convince me the woman I loved had betrayed me. I have documentation. I have testimony. I have 4 years of Do Hyun-woo's private knowledge of where she'd been living, kept quiet at her request, out of fear for her family's safety." "This is a family matter," Jae-wook said, voice tight. "It has no place in a board session." "It has every place here," said Attorney Choi Seorin, Hanshin's chief counsel, who'd been silent throughout the footage with the particular stillness of a lawyer already building a case in her head. "Chairman Kong, if even a fraction of this is verifiable, you're not looking at a family dispute. You're looking at unauthorized foreign contract negotiation conducted by an officer of this company without board knowledge, plus what sounds distressingly close to coercion and extortion of a private citizen. That's not a personnel issue. That's a matter for the prosecutor's office, whether or not you choose to pursue it that way." "I'll leave that decision to Amara," Minho said. "It's her family that was threatened, not mine." Every head in the room turned toward the door where Amara stood, invited in for exactly this moment, composed now in a way she hadn't managed to be in 7 years of hiding. "I don't want revenge," she said, into a room of strangers who held more power over her life than any group of people ever had. "I want it in writing, permanently, that Kang Jae-wook has no further authority over this company, no access to my family's business dealings, and no contact with my daughters. Whether he's prosecuted is Minho's decision and the law's decision. Whether he's finished is mine, and I'm telling you now, he's finished." The vote, when it came, wasn't close. Jae-wook was removed from the board within the hour, his private accounts frozen pending a formal audit, his allies scattering toward the door the moment the outcome was clear, already composing the distancing statements they'd give to journalists by afternoon. Jae-wook stopped at the boardroom threshold on his way out, looking back at his nephew with something that might, in a better man, have resembled shame. "Your father would be disappointed in you," he said, "choosing a foreigner's family over your own blood." "My father," Minho said, "spent his last year alive trying to protect this company from exactly the kind of man you turned out to be. I'm not choosing her family over my blood, Uncle. I'm choosing to finally understand which one of us was actually blood and which one was just wearing the name." Jae-wook left. The doors closed, and for the first time since the ballroom the night before, Minho let himself exhale. Grace found Amara in the hallway outside, gripping her hands. "It's done. It's actually done." "It started," Amara corrected softly, watching through the glass as Minho crossed the boardroom toward her, the weight of 9 years of company politics still visible in his shoulders, and underneath it, something lighter than she'd seen on him in 7 years. "The part that scares me now isn't him anymore." "Then what is it?" Amara watched Minho approach, watched him glance toward the window where, 3 floors down in a private waiting room, Hana and Nari were almost certainly ignoring the babysitter's attempts at a puzzle in favor of the view. "It's whether I know how to let someone back in," she said, after 7 years of only knowing how to keep people out. 6 months later, the bakery on the corner near Itaewon had a new sign. Amara's original one, repainted Sunlight Bakery, but with a second name added underneath in smaller gold letters, Esti by Amara Adeyemi, protected by family. She'd insisted on that specific wording. Minho had insisted on paying for the new sign. It was, Grace said, the most functional argument either of them had ever had. Kang Jae-wook's case moved slowly through the courts, as these things do. An audit revealing not just the Dae-chun alliance, but a decade of quiet embezzlement he'd assumed no one would ever be positioned to notice. He would not go to prison forever. He would, however, never again sit in a room where he mattered. Minho had not asked Amara to marry him again. Not yet. He'd learned in 6 months of Saturday mornings spent badly braiding 2 very opinionated 6-year-olds' hair, while Amara slept in, for the first time in years, that some promises needed to be rebuilt slowly, brick by brick, rather than declared all at once the way he'd done it the first time, young and certain and wrong about how fragile certainty could be. What he did do, on a Sunday in early spring, was ask his grandmother, Yoon Hae-ja, 81 years old and the only member of the Kong family who had never once doubted Amara, not 7 years ago and not now, to help him with something in her jewelry box. "You already gave her the necklace," his grandmother said, amused, watching him fumble with the clasp of a second, smaller piece. "What is this one for?" "Not Amara," Minho said. "Not yet. This one's for the girls." Matching. So they know the story didn't start with them being taken from something. It started with them being protected by something, and now there's enough love in this family to protect each of them the same way. His grandmother took the 2 small jade pendants from his hands, magnolia buds again, but smaller, made new, made for children instead of inherited from grief, and turned them over in her palm. "Your mother would have adored them," she said. "Both the necklaces and the girls." "I know," Minho said. "I tell them that every week. I think Hana's decided your ghost personally approves of every dessert she eats, which is doing wonders for the bakery's sugar cube inventory. Downstairs, through the open window, he could hear them. Hana and Nari arguing companionably over whose turn it was to help decant flour. Grace laughing at something on her phone. Hyun-woo pretending badly not to be enjoying being called Uncle Hyun-woo by two children who had simply decided, with the total authority of 6-year-olds, that titles were earned by presents rather than blood. And Amara's voice underneath all of it, calling up the stairs. Minho, if you don't come referee this flower argument in the next 30 seconds, I'm letting them settle it by committee, and you know how that goes. He went down 2 steps at a time, 2 small jade pendants in his pocket, a life he'd once believed was stolen from him, waiting instead exactly where it had always been. Not lost, never abandoned, only hidden for 7 years by a lie that had finally, completely run out of places to hide. The necklace around Hana's neck caught the afternoon light as she looked up at him, flower on her nose, utterly unbothered by the argument she'd apparently already won. Appa, she said, testing the word the way she'd tested it every day for 6 months, like she still couldn't quite believe she was allowed to keep it. Nari says I get more flour because I'm older. Tell her that's not fair. You were born 4 minutes apart, Minho said, crouching to her eye level, home in a way he hadn't let himself believe he could be. That's not seniority. That's a rounding error. Behind him, Amara laughed, really laughed, unguarded, the sound he'd spent 7 years certain he would never hear again. And for the first time since a jade necklace had caught his eye across a crowded ballroom, Kang Minho understood exactly what his mother's magnolia had been protecting all along. Not a fortune, not a company, just this. A kitchen full of flour and small arguments and people who had chosen, against every threat built to keep them apart, to come home to each other anyway,